Okie dokie. Well, welcome back. Earlier today, I did a video on how America is Mystery Babylon, Part 1. And we went through Jeremiah 50 and 51, which is the most detailed section of Scripture that relates to the fall of Mystery Babylon. And now it is in the Old Testament, and so you might be asking me, well, how do we know that that's a passage that relates to Mystery Babylon and not Ancient Babylon? And my answer to you is that the fall described in Jeremiah 50 and 51 comes via fire and arrows. And that's not how ancient Babylon fell. And so clearly something else is going on here. What is this entity in Jeremiah 50 and 51 that is called Babylon but isn't ancient Babylon? For example, ancient Babylon did indeed have remains of that city pillaged over the millennia and used to rebuild stuff. That region was indeed inhabited. But Jeremiah says that this Babylon entity, Mystery Babylon, it's nobody's going to be pillaging any of the building materials from it. Why? Because the land it's plagued. The land itself is polluted, and it's going to be uninhabited. But we see in the New Testament that there was actually a church at Babylon, and so these prophecies clearly do not. So thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. This is relating to Mystery Babylon, and we're going to talk about that in just a little bit here. But I'm looking back. The church that is at Babylon, elected together with you, saluteth you, and so doth Marcus my son. So that's from 1 Peter 5:13. There was a church at Babylon during the first century of the church. And so we have these sections in the Old Testament where it's using the terminology Babylon, but it's clearly relating to end times stuff. And this is in keeping with what I've mentioned in other videos, that the prophets of the Old Testament were given a message for their own time, and then they were given a message for the end times. And we see this most clearly in Daniel, specifically Daniel chapter 12, where Daniel was a very studious and scholarly guy, and he wanted to know all the answers. And this is Daniel speaking. He says, I heard, but I understood not. And then I said, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? Speaking to a pre-incarnate Christ. And we know this because we have, this man is clothed in linen, and he's standing on the waters in the middle of this river. And then there's two angels on either bank of the river. And they're all having this dialogue with Daniel. But Daniel's speaking to the one who is clothed in linen, who's standing on the waters of the river. This is Jesus Christ, because walking on water is a symbol of divinity. And Jesus tells Daniel, go thy way, Daniel, the words are closed up and sealed until the time of the end. In other words, you've been given some prophecies that are for the time of the end, and until that time comes, they're going to be sealed. For thousands of years, no one's going to know what this stuff is talking about until the time of the end. And as I have attested in my other videos, the time of the end is now, and these things are unsealed. We can know and understand them. We can understand the chronology of the end times, because that chronology is laid out for us in the scriptures, in some cases to the days. Daniel 12:11, Daniel 12:12. We have events laid out to the day. And I talk about these in great detail in some of my other videos, and Lord willing, I will continue to do this stuff as you know I feel led to do it. I kind of wanted a peaceful, quiet afternoon to just do some stuff myself around the house here, but I just have felt really restless, and I guess that means that I probably need to finish up part 2 of Mystery Babylon, however long it takes, and get it done, get it out there, so that people can begin to think about these things. Because yes, America is Mystery Babylon. Now, to be clear, there is this greater context, and you will see this, that really we could make the argument that Western civilization is Mystery Babylon. But when in looking at the scriptures, the Mystery Babylon prophecies relate to a specific city and a specific nation, which is the premier nation of this Mystery Babylon system, world system. So we could say Western civilization has fallen. We've turned away from God. We have embraced things like fornication and child murder, and the West is going to be judged, and that is going to be most obvious with the destruction of Mystery Babylon, the premier empire. But the ripple effect is going to be felt throughout the entire world. And so in the last video, we summarized Jeremiah 50 to 51. I would highly recommend, if you can't stand my videos because of my rambling tone and how long they are, which I can completely understand, I would still recommend that you read Jeremiah 50 to 51 in the King James, because it lays out all this stuff that's highly specific. There's a large Jewish population in Mystery Babylon, and the destruction of Mystery Babylon causes them to start thinking about returning to Jerusalem. And they testify that Mystery Babylon was judged by God. Mystery Babylon has an enemy to the north. And you might ask the question, to the north of what? Well, we talked about this a little bit, and I decided to pull up some visual aids here today. So whether we're talking about, because in the Holy Land you have Israel, which is right here on this portion of the Mediterranean Sea, and if you go north from that, north, remember, on an AE map is motion towards the center, which is the North Pole. So we got Israel here. If you go north towards that, actually I believe Moscow is pretty much due north of Israel. So if we're using Israel as our reference, Russia is north of Israel. And if we're using the United States as our reference, working off of the understanding that America is Mystery Babylon, well, what's north of us across the Arctic Circle? Also Russia. We get the same answer either way. And Russia will be the pinnacle nation of this Eastern coalition of powers that sees their opportunity. When Mystery Babylon is in a civil war situation, violence in the land, ruler against ruler, those exact words are there in Jeremiah, they're going to see their opportunity to end Mystery Babylon in just one day. Just think of how much America has interfered in the affairs of the world, and how many people want to see us gone, because it just removes a complication and they can go back to doing business in their own arenas without our interference. Yes, there will be many nations, and the Bible specifically lists off, now using ancient language of course, but lists off like a half dozen different nations that will be part of this coalition that wipes out Mystery Babylon. I'm just going to go through these briefly and summarize. We're not going to hit them in as much detail as I did in the last video. But Mystery Babylon has a mother country. Mystery Babylon is the hindermost of nations, and I wanted to pull this up specifically to show you this. We're on the back side of the neighborhood, folks. So if you draw a line from here down through the tip of South America on the AE map, which is the true shape of our realm, we're on the back side of the neighborhood. You have the civilized world of the ancient world over here, centered around, well, the Middle East, which is over in this region here. We are across the North Pole from that on the back side of the neighborhood. And look, way out here, we just have a whole bunch of nothing, or at least that's what they tell us. We just have a whole bunch of nothing. We're on the back side of everything. We are the hindermost of nations. And yet, this Mystery Babylon entity, even though it's the hindermost of nations, it's projecting its power throughout the whole earth and ruling over the kings of the earth. Now, this is really interesting, though, too, because she's the hindermost of nations. In other words, Mystery Babylon is not just a city, she is also a nation. Just like ancient Babylon was both a city and a nation, Mystery Babylon is also a city and a nation. I hope that makes sense. I get people trying to argue with me all the time. No, it's just a city. I had a guy the other day, it's the city of Jerusalem. No, it's not. The Bible actually says that Jerusalem is spiritual Sodom and Gomorrah and spiritual Egypt, but it does not say that Jerusalem is Mystery Babylon, and that doesn't even make sense in context. That God's going to destroy Jerusalem, because here in Jeremiah, he is using the fall of Mystery Babylon to bring his people back to Jerusalem. So does it make sense that he's going to destroy Jerusalem to bring his people back to Jerusalem? Not so much. Not so much. It has a wall. It has seasonal migrant workers who are immigrants from other countries. Has a ruler that's described as a king in terms of power. Mystery Babylon is described as the hammer of the whole earth, God's weapons of war that he uses to judge other nations. Look at what's happening in Iran. We talked about this. I'm not happy that the United States is the policeman of the whole world, but it's very biblical. And the regime in Iran is an anti-God, wicked regime. And we have been used as the hammer of the earth to go in there and smash them. And that's exactly what happened. It's very biblical. It's very prophetic. Now, I don't have to be on board with this cycle of endless wars. I don't think that's good for America. I would like to see us withdraw from that and not be a militaristic, imperialistic power in the world, but understand that there's a spiritual component here, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And I really don't have any say on the direction that my country goes, for the most part. I can pray. I can ask God to have mercy on this country for a little bit longer because of his people here, but ultimately history is going to go in a certain direction, like it or not. So Mystery Babylon has a signature bullock, a bull, a type of cattle that will be destroyed when Mystery Babylon falls. And I talked about how I think this is bison and buffalo. There's a little bit of a distinction there, but they're both kind of the same type of creature. And they're very iconic of, America, historically. If America has a signature bullock, it is bison and buffalo. And I do believe that they will go extinct when we are judged. And the judgment's going to shake North America. It's not just going to be necessarily confined to the borders of America. So that's something to keep in mind. Proud against the Lord. This is a recompense for her violence that she's worked in the world in destroying the innocent, men, women, and children. She has many men of war. She has many mingled people in the midst of her. She's mad upon her idols. And we saw that there's specific language in there that talks about graven images that confound with no breath and molten images of falsehood with no breath that are deceiving people. I work with AI. That's the first thing that popped into my mind. Graven images that confound. Everyone's addicted to these stinking phones. Can't put them down. You deprive people of their phones and they go into like drug withdrawal and they start acting like demonic banshees. It is insane. We are addicted to our graven images. We are addicted to our molten images of falsehood that feed us lies. And the term vanity, the idea is that these technologies are conceived in vanity, is built into the language there in Jeremiah. The Bible says, I will fill thee with men. This is a judgment that God speaks on her. And interesting that over 70% of immigrants, illegals coming into our country are young men of military age. And when the Civil War kicks off, they're going to be right there in the midst of it, burning, looting, raping, pillaging, destroying, killing, adding to the chaos and the judgment. It's going to be absolutely, unmistakably the judgment of God, because it's going to be on a level that the world has never before seen. And even though it will be other nations and us tearing ourselves apart, basically, the world's going to look at it and know, this is God's judgment. We've never seen anything like this before. The immigrants that live there will love her and try to save her, and that does include the Jewish people that live there. Babylon is described in Revelation, as we'll see in just a moment, as having dispensed the wine of the wrath of her fornication to the world. And these two themes are there, these two sins of Mystery Babylon: fornication and basically abusing children. So that can be, PDOs, pedos. That can also be abortion. We've aborted, officially, 70 million babies in this country, and that's just the official stuff. Systematic records really aren't kept. So you have to kind of take records from a few different organizations and try to stitch them together to get that 70 million number, and understand that illegal abortions go on all the time. We're over 100 million. I am sure that we've aborted over 100 million in just this country. And the fornication, the sexual revolution that we exported to the world. We talked about how America makes the majority of pornography in the world. It's all made right here in the USA, baby. And we exported that to the world. And the abortion that goes along with that also was exported to the world. And, we've killed 100 million babies here. I'm going to say that probably 1 billion children have been murdered, have been aborted, worldwide. No doubt. And that's in the modern era. I mean, down through the ages, probably way more. And there's different theories that God is going to give those aborted children a second chance at life during the millennial kingdom, that they may actually be brought back to live on the earth. Um, I can't really speak to that. I think there are surprises in store for us that we're just not specifically told in the scriptures. And we'll just have to, enjoy those surprises when they come. That very well may be the case. I don't know. I'm not going to be dogmatic about it, but it's a thought that I've heard that some preachers, pastors have put out there. Mystery Babylon. The Lord's battle axe and weapons of war destroys the whole earth. There's the association with cornerstones, Freemasonry. We had talked about that. The Freemasons, pretty much, they set up the cornerstones of virtually all public buildings in the U.S. Her sea will dry up. Is this the Gulf of America or the Great Lakes? Not sure. She is the praise of the whole earth. A lot of countries do idolize America, put us on a pedestal, and emulate our culture. That's not a good thing. Actually, we see that Japan has embraced American culture to an inordinate degree, and that has not been a good thing for Japan. Japan's now looking at an extreme population decline, the effeminization of its men. They're just having a crisis where they're trying to get people to marry now, and it's just not good. We talked about Bel shall be punished. Is there a demonic principality over America now, and how these triumphant arches in the world, like the one in France where we saw all these Luciferian rituals to bring in the Olympics this year, these triumphant arches represent spiritual principalities and powers, potentially. That's the theory. And Trump wants to build one here in America. Bel shall be punished, and it talks about this ancient evil demonic deity that it presides over Mystery Babylon. There will be rumors of civil war year after year. We talked about how that's been going on since at least 2019 when I wrote my book, How America Ends. And then the sign that God's judgment has come will be when there is actual violence in the land, ruler against ruler. Civil war is here. That's what civil war is. It's violence within the land, ruler against ruler, and that's the specific language we see in Jeremiah. By the way, this does mean that Mystery Babylon has a whole land. This speaks to her being a nation and not just a city. By the way, which city is Mystery Babylon? Well, there's some thoughts on that, because we do have Washington, D.C. I don't think it's Washington, D.C., but I'm going to lay this out there, because Washington, D.C. is one of the obelisk cities, and it's a Freemasonic city. There are all these symbols that are inscribed, I guess is a word we could use, in the streets themselves of Washington, D.C. There's a Masonic square and compass. There is an owl of Horus, and there is a broken pentagram. And Washington, D.C. is one of the obelisk cities. We have the Washington Monument. It's a giant obelisk. What's an obelisk? It is a mystery religion symbol that represents the phallus. So it has ties to these sex cults. And it goes back to, well, it's big in Freemasonry, but it goes back to Egypt and Babylon. And it is a phallic symbol. It's a gigantic you-know-what right there in our capital city, pointing at the moon. And that's what NASA is doing with these rituals when they shoot rockets at the moon. It's a phallic symbol, a male symbol being shot at a female divinity symbol. Now, notice, so right here you can see parts of the pentagram very clearly. And I say it's a broken pentagram. There is a little arm of it. I think it's this right here. This is an old photo you can see. But I believe it's right here where it's not complete. It's a broken pentagram. What's the significance of that? Well, a pentagram's a form of summoning circle used in these occult rituals. When you're summoning a demon, you draw a summoning circle, usually with salt or chalk or something like that. And the idea is that whatever the material is, it's specifically something that's designed to keep, to form a boundary. And you don't want to break that boundary, otherwise that demonic entity can break forth on you, because a demon is far more powerful than the occultist summoning it. Well, a broken pentagram symbolizes this. We summoned demons, and we have no protection from them. They broke free and they completely took over. That's what a broken pentagram symbolizes. And this is, a broken pentagram right over Washington, D.C. The Owl of Horus is also there. I was there on January 6th. I walked into the Capitol on January 6th. I'm not going to talk about that now. I've talked about that in other videos. Let me say quite unequivocally that nobody would have gotten into that building unless they were allowed. Those mag-sealed metal reinforced doors are impenetrable, at least to the level of capability that the protesters on January 6th had. People were let in there intentionally as a false flag, as was I. But look at the Capitol grounds from the air. You can see the Owl of Horus. Not at all. That's not coincidence. It's intentional. And the square and compass is there as well. I couldn't find a really good... this is where it's at. I couldn't find a really good layout of it, but if you look at the streets, there is actually, in this area up here in the modern era, there's a little loopy-loop thing. And so if you really zoom in on it and see the streets and stuff, it looks like a very detailed square and compass. Like it has the little loopy-loop thing at the top and then these straight roads. Very interesting. Again, another Freemasonic symbol, which is Luciferian mystery religion. It's Satanism, is what it is. And if you don't believe that, if you're a Freemason, you're like, no, surely not. Surely not Luciferian mystery religion. It's not Satanism. Go read Albert Pike's Morals and Dogma. And this guy's the most influential Freemason of the modern era. He didn't live in the modern era, but he formed Freemasonry into the very satanic organization that it is now. And Morals and Dogma is the philosophical and religious underpinnings of Freemasonry, and he outright admits that they are Luciferians. He outright admits that he was a Satanist, he was a founder of one of the iterations of the KKK, he was a racist, he was a slave owner, he was a Confederate general. Albert Pike. He also made predictions about how the One World Order would come to power, and those are really, really interesting. How the world communism is going to be set up to be a bad guy, people will cast it off, and having already discredited Christianity, the people of the earth will willingly flock to Luciferian mystery religion, a New Age system. Alright, but I don't think Washington, D.C. is Mystery Babylon. It's definitely a wicked city, it's definitely under demonic control, it's definitely one of the obelisk cities of the West. What are the obelisk cities? So you got Washington, D.C., that's the military occult complex center. Although there's other centers here in the U.S., like Denver, Colorado, or Arizona, especially around Lake Havasu. I could go on and on. But anyway, then you have the financial obelisk city, that's London. Then you have the religious obelisk city, that's Rome. Okay, but I don't think the Mystery Babylon is Washington, D.C. And by the way, there are a ton of cities that supposedly are built on 7 hills or 7 mountains. There's a whole long list of them. Wikipedia has a list. And the city I'm about to mention is one of them. And I think ancient Babylon was supposedly as well. Rome was founded on 7 hills. I don't know. There's got to be a deeper, much, much longer running significance of that. But because Rome was built on 7 hills or 7 mountains, that's one reason why so many people have felt that Rome is Mystery Babylon. There is a little bit of a problem there, and I guess I'll just address it now while we're on the subject. The Antichrist does not rule over Mystery Babylon. The Bible says that there is a king over Mystery Babylon at the time of Mystery Babylon's fall. That's in Jeremiah. I think it's in Revelation too. We'll see in a moment when we go there. But the Antichrist doesn't rule over Mystery Babylon. The Antichrist rules over the terrible beast kingdom of the Antichrist. And we'll see in Revelation that they are 2 separate entities. And that's a really important distinction because down through the ages, Christians have gotten this wrong. Back when things were sealed, because the time of the end hadn't come yet, a lot of Christians believed that ancient Rome and the Roman emperors were Antichrist. And then later they believed that the Roman Catholic Church was Mystery Babylon and the Pope was Antichrist. But the problem is that Antichrist and Mystery Babylon aren't really associated with each other. There's a king of Babylon, and then there's the Antichrist ruling over the terrible beast kingdom. And we'll see that in a little bit. But I say that because you have a lot of people right now saying that Trump is the Antichrist. Now, he could be, but the Antichrist centers everything around Jerusalem. And so that does suggest to me, however, there is a little bit of wiggle room in that there's something that suggests that the king of Mystery Babylon does have a connection to Jerusalem as well. So maybe the Antichrist and the king of Mystery Babylon are the same person, but not necessarily. But anyways, that being said, a lot of people are putting out the theory that Trump is going to be the Antichrist. In order for that to be the case, he does have to become an international figure, eventually associated with Jerusalem. Now, we do see that he is doing his sort of, I forget what it's called. Is it the Peace Council, something like that? I have seen that he's trying to put together an organization that supersedes the UN. So he could very well be it. It's definitely a possibility, but it's not necessarily a certainty. So be careful with that and pay attention. Anyway, here's where I think Mystery Babylon, the city, is in the US. Because if you search Babylon, USA, this is the first result that comes up. It's a little suburb of New York City. And even though the suburb itself is pretty tiny, this is the first result that Google's going to come up with for Babylon. Let's zoom in so you see Babylon. There it is, Babylon, West Babylon, North Babylon. And it's right here in this greater New York City metropolitan area. And then what else do we have in New York City? Well, we've got the Statue of Liberty. I mean, there's been all kinds of occult stuff going on in New York City for a very long time. We have a building there that has no windows, that looks like it's a Shroud facility from science fiction. Shroud is, it's this skyscraper building in the Mass Effect series that is responsible for atmosphere manipulation. And so you have this giant building in New York City that has all these vents on it, but no windows. Really sketchy. And it supposedly has ties to the NSA, or possibly the CIA. Like, what is that there? Well, I do think that it could be a Shroud facility that's there to dispense chemical or biological agents or pharmaceutical agents over the city as needed. But that, you know, then there were the World Trade Center towers. Definitely an inside job. Definitely planned long in advance. Definitely a major conspiracy around that. Just look up Building 7. But no, let's go to this, which was given to us by French Freemasons. This is Liberty Enlightening the World, is the technical term of this piece. Enlightening is interesting because you have Luciferians. Lucifer, the Shining One. You have the Illuminati. Again, the idea of light or being enlightened is built into that. And then you have the Enlightenment movement. Being enlightened or light is built into that as well. Satan presents himself as an angel of light. It's deception. I've talked about this in videos before. Satan operates on this dark light spectrum. He will appeal to religious and, lawful good characters by presenting himself as an angel of light and representing wholesomeness and righteousness. But it will present as, like Roman Catholicism. Those guys think that they're real Christians, and they're not. There is deep paganism and wickedness within Catholicism. It's a facade. It's a deception. Catholicism is a mix of Roman paganism and biblical Christianity, and you got a corrupted church. And that's why people think that Roman Catholicism could be Mystery Babylon, because she is a whore who's been unfaithful. So I can definitely, understand that there's some connections there. But what does this statue represent? I've talked about this before in other videos. This is Libertas, goddess of liberty. Libertas was the patron goddess of freed slaves in ancient Rome. And the problem was these freed slaves often didn't have ways to support themselves and their families, and so they turned to prostitution. And so Libertas came to have the connotation by association, because these freed slaves would take Libertas as their patron goddess, And then they were often turning to the sex trades in order to support themselves and their families, so Libertas achieved this connotation of sexual liberation. That's what this is in the harbor of New York. It's a sex goddess. All right? Now, we like to sanitize it and say, no, it's just liberty in general. But there are all manner of pagan symbols built into this thing, from the 7 rays to whatever that thing is in her hand. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all the details of that, but understand that this is, what other nation on earth has a representation of a whore, a sex goddess, especially on this scale? It's pretty obvious, folks. Pretty obvious. Now, there's another connection here that I want to mention from the book of Daniel because I think it's significant. And I talked about this in the last video. I'm going to talk about it again. I'm going to show you an image that relates. And then we're going to look into Revelation and wind up this part 2. Let's see where we're at time-wise. Time. Okay, half hour. I'm actually going at a pretty good clip today. Count your blessings, guys. Alright. Anyway, so Daniel 2, we talked about this in the last video. Nebuchadnezzar, who is the ruler, he's the most notable ruler of ancient Babylon, which was the most notable of all the ancient kingdoms. The Bible says that the Babylonians, they had all these magicians, astronomers, sorcerers, the Chaldean class, very educated. Charlatans, though, ultimately. But Babylon had rulership, it had dominion over the beasts to a degree that we can hardly fathom. It had mastery of nature. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon, which may not have been in Babylon the city, but may have been in Nineveh, which was at one point part of the Babylonian Empire. There's some debate about, where exactly the Hanging Gardens were and all that. Anyways, not to get off on these rabbit trails, but Nebuchadnezzar was the head or ruler of ancient Babylon. Ancient Babylon was the first of 4 nations laid out in the Table of Nations that makes an appearance in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, where he sees a statue. And he, Nebuchadnezzar, and Babylon are the head of gold on this statue. And then there's 3 other empires that would come after. And these empires, and by the way, it's not necessarily that one would end and be completely obliterated and the next would rise up. There was often one fading out as another came into ascendancy. But these 4 empires were the empires that appeared before the first coming of Jesus Christ. The first coming of Jesus Christ. Let me, during the time of Rome's dominion on the earth. And in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. So, 2,000 years ago, the roots of God's kingdom, the true Zion, not the material, facsimile Zion that we see now in the earth that people are trying to build through human effort and all manner of wickedness. No, God's Zion, he set that up. He initiated it when Christ came to earth and died for our sins. Which is why Jesus said, the kingdom's at hand, over and over throughout his ministry. And we see that this promise has been fulfilled. We see the stone that was cut out of the mountain without hands. That's Jesus. He is the unhewn stone. He is the chief cornerstone. He's the stone that the builders rejected. Who are the builders? Well, the Freemasons, these Luciferians, they trace their lineage all the way back to Pythagoras, if not earlier. But they say that Pythagoras is the first Freemason. These guys have been around for a very long time. Their doctrines and this mystery religion influenced the Pharisees of Jesus' day. The builders, these secret societies within Judaism, these occultists, they rejected Christ. He is the stone that the builders rejected. A stone that was cut out of the mountain without hands. Not a work of men, in other words, but a work of God. And it breaks in pieces all the other metals on this statue. In other words, this kingdom that Jesus sets up, it's going to outlast all the other earthly kingdoms. It will stand forever. Now, Jesus has not taken the throne yet. We've talked about that, but his kingdom is already initiated 2,000 years ago, and it is growing. And just like Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream, where this stone, I believe it, where was it? Well, it dashes all the other kingdoms to pieces, They blow away in the wind, and then the stone, yeah, here we go. The stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. That's what's happened with Christianity. Now, the gospel has not gone out to all the nations just yet. That's still a work in progress. And I'm a little hazy as to whether the church will accomplish that fully or not. Because we do see in Revelation that the angels go forth and proclaim the gospel during the end times. God's going to make sure that everyone gets a fair chance at salvation. That's just how he is. And I don't know if the angels doing it is evidence that the church failed, ultimately, in spreading the gospel through the whole earth as we're commanded to do. Or maybe the church succeeds, but then God goes above and beyond and also gives an angelic warning, angels preaching the gospel, just to make sure that everyone definitely 100% beyond any incontrovertible doubt has access to the gospel before the end, before the judgment. But Christianity right now, 2,000 years after Christ, it's here in the West, it's not looking that great, but it's alive and well. The faith of Jesus Christ is still alive in the earth, and I do believe that at the end of all the sufferings and the trials and the tribulations, that when Christ returns in the rapture, yes, there will be saints to meet him. How many? I don't know. I guess we'll see when we get there. A lot of us will probably be killed off before that point even gets here. But man, it would be pretty epic to survive to see Jesus return. That would be pretty amazing. All right, but Daniel 2. So we have the 4 nations, 4 empires before Jesus' first coming. And the first time around, he came as a humble, suffering servant. The second time around, he's coming as a conquering king to take what's rightfully his. And he's going to slay his enemies with the sword of his mouth. It's going to be very different. But the 4 superpowers that exist before his second coming are laid out in Daniel 7. And it's very clear that this is not just a reiteration of Daniel 2, as some Bible commentators of the past thought incorrectly. Matthew Henry believes it's just an iteration of a reiteration of Daniel 2. Or at least in some of the writings that I've read of Matthew Henry, I don't know if it's necessarily this embedded commentary, but he wrote things to that effect. But after this listing of terrible beasts that rises up out of the sea, which is a representation of the nations of the earth, in other words, the Gentile nations, after that we have this one like the Son of Man, that's Jesus, came with the clouds of heaven and came to the Ancient of Days, that's God the Father, and they brought him near before him. So the Son of Man comes to the Ancient of Days. Why? Why is it the Son of Man coming to the Ancient of Days? Well, the Ancient of Days is seated on the throne, so he's fixed. So the Son of Man is brought before him. And then the Ancient of Days confers all lordship upon the Son, who has proven himself worthy by his obedience to the will of the Father and by his substitutionary death for sins upon the cross. There was given him dominion, glory, and a kingdom that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that which shall not be destroyed. And I've talked about this in other videos. The millennial kingdom is just the first 1,000 years of an eternal kingdom that will never end. And it's the 1,000 years that takes place during the last 1,000 years, or the Sabbath day, so to speak, of the earth. History will be 6,000 years of human history, and then an additional 1,000-year millennial kingdom, where the earth has rest. And then after that, heaven and earth are destroyed, a new heaven is created, a new earth wherein dwelleth righteousness, and then we're into eternity, and who knows exactly what's going to happen from that point on. There will be things for us to do. There will be things to build, things to make, things to create, things to celebrate, things to experience. It will be unlike what we've experienced here in this earth. The Bible clearly says that at the Lord's hand there are pleasures forever. So the Lord made all the original pleasures, all right? He knows about pleasure. When he says there's good things for those who love him in the future, he means it. And He's got us covered. We don't know exactly what form we're going to be in, and we don't know exactly how life will be, but we'll be like Him in a glorified and perfect form, and we'll be with everyone who matters, all of God's saints, and it's going to be good. You know, people talk about heaven like it's going to be this horrible experience. Oh, what are we going to do? Sit around on clouds and strum harps? Come on, guys. What do you do for fun on Earth already? You go to concerts. You eat food. You hang out with friends and have parties. Um, you know, all of those things, the fellowship, the companionship, the feasting, that's all going to be there. Are you interested in history? Because we'll have access to everything that happened, in human history. Are you interested in science? We'll have a greater understanding of the universe and how it works and how God made it. Are you interested in architecture? Well, heaven is like, I think it's something like 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles by 1,500 miles. So what form that is, I don't know. Is it a sphere? Is it a cube? Is it a ziggurat or a pyramid? I don't know. We'll find out, but it's going to be insane because it's made of pure gold and precious jewels. It's a crystal city. We'll have a new earth. And do you like animals? Because the Bible says that the predators won't be predators anymore. That you'll have predator animals like wolves and lions laying down with little goats and lambs. You'll have little children being able to handle poisonous snakes without getting bitten. Do you like reptiles? I'm a reptile guy. I think snakes and lizards are cool. Turtles especially. Turtles are the best. Love reptiles. I love sharks. Got a chance to work in a hatchery where I raised sharks. That was fantastic. Loved it. Think about this. Nature will be restored and you'll get to experience all that. Fellowship with the animals the way it was supposed to be, without the curse of sin and death. That pet dog that you love so much, it's never going to die in the new heaven and the new earth. You're going to have that companionship and that fellowship forever. And the intelligence that is there, but veiled, I think, in the animal world now, just because of sin and inbreeding and all this stuff, that's going to be restored as well. We see that even today, many animals are highly intelligent, highly intuitive, and you have people who are saying stuff like, well, animals can't experience love and stuff like that. I'm not so sure about that. I've seen videos of mother animals where their children die and they go into depression so bad that they starve to death. That's not Darwinism, all right? There's a level of empathy and emotion there that goes beyond just mechanical, robotic survival of the fittest. Anything you can think of, the perfected form of it exists in heaven. So don't tell me that heaven's going to be boring. All right, if you're a social person, there will be people to socialize with. All the saints down through the ages. If you're a person who likes doing stuff, there will be work to do. And I say that in confidence because even when things were perfect in Eden, God gave Adam work to do. He had a purpose. He had things to do. Now, work didn't injure him. It didn't wear him out. It didn't make him suffer. Those were part of the curse, where he had to work for survival from the point of the curse onward. But prior to that, work was fulfilling. Work was meaningful. Work was something he could take satisfaction in. And work was something that he could grow and develop and share with his children and learn more about how to do it better from God himself. And that's what eternity is going to be. The things that we will build alongside Christ our Savior and our God, there's no way of expressing what that's going to be like. Now, I'm sorry I got off on that rabbit trail, but I feel like I needed to say that, and maybe I need to snip that snippet and make a separate video out of it because, too many people are stuck in this mindset of, oh, heaven's going to be boring and hell's going to be the greatest party. Hell's going to be terrible because every good thing that comes from God, you're going to be cut off from it, and you're going to be in an environment where, I believe, because God doesn't suppress free will, you're just going to be thrown in there with all the things that hate God, and you're still going to have your free will. In other words, it's going to be a Darwinian system where the demons and the strong, everyone's in torment. Everyone from the top to the bottom is in torment. And being in torment, they have nothing but hate and rage, and they just want to take that out on everyone else. And so it's just going to be an absolute terrible place to be. And you can imagine the repercussions of that. The weak are going to be hunted and destroyed and ripped to pieces over and over, but everyone is immortal, so that's just a cycle that goes on and on and on forever and ever and ever. And there's nothing but fear, there's nothing but suffering, there's nothing but pain and despair. Hell's going to be pretty terrible. It's not going to be a party. Heaven's where the party's at. Hope to see you there. Now, let's go back here because I kind of lost the plot there, but let's go back to that first beast kingdom. It's the lion with eagle's wings, and I've mentioned this before. I believe that this is, just like Mystery Babylon in Jeremiah has a mother country, I believe that this is a representation of our mother country and us. By our and us, I mean the United States. The mother country being Great Britain, the lion, and the eagle's wings that are removed being the United States of America. I do believe that this first of the four beast kingdoms is America, and I believe it is Mystery Babylon. And there's a parallelism here, if that's the conclusion, that this first entity is Mystery Babylon, and then in the other list, the first entity was Ancient Babylon. That's interesting. And then the lion with eagle's wings is also an interesting connection because it was a symbol of Ancient Babylon. So we have that additional point of data, the Lamassu. These are Lamassu, so they're winged, sometimes lions, sometimes the body of something else. But these entities that have like, and then the head of the ruler on there. And sometimes, like you can see, sometimes they have a bull. It's just a large, powerful animal usually, but sometimes it'll be a lion, sometimes it'll be a bull. And that's kind of a characteristic symbol of ancient Babylon. And I don't think that's coincidental that you have this Lamassu-like figure that is here as the first entity of those four entities that are the superpowers that rise before the second coming of Jesus Christ. And so if this first one is Mystery Babylon, well, we know that the fourth one, the Terrible Beast Kingdom, this is the Terrible Beast Kingdom of the Antichrist, and we see it again in Revelation. And so if this is Mystery Babylon and America, this first one, it is then, by definition, separate from the Terrible Beast Kingdom. And I think that makes sense, as we'll see in Revelation, because we have the whore of Babylon, and at first she's riding on the Terrible Beast. Then the Terrible Beast turns and burns her with fire and devours her flesh. In other words, there's a time when she rules over the nations that make up the Terrible Beast Kingdom, but they throw her off and destroy her. And specifically, they burn her with fire and then devour her. And that's really interesting, because that's the destruction of Mystery Babylon in Jeremiah, that she is destroyed by arrows that don't miss and by fire. Okay, so that's the Daniel connection. Let's go ahead and look at Revelation 17, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Okay, and there came one of the seven angels, which had the seven vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, and I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Okay, so the wine of her fornication, she dispensed that to the whole earth, and all the inhabitants of the earth are made drunk with that, and it is the wine of fornication. Again, we've talked about all that. How it's the U.S. producing a lot of the pornography. It's the U.S. who's consuming the children that are being bought and sold. It's the U.S. that has put out this idea of free love and the sexual revolution that the world just also adopted. It's why the world, especially the Western world, is mad upon our idols. It's just one reason why. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. So that's the beast. By the way, I will mention this. Well, yeah, I'll mention it in passing. I'm not going to develop it in great detail. I've had people say that the Beast Kingdom of the Antichrist, these heads and horns represent like the EU. Could be. I don't really know what the second and third beast kingdoms are going to be that come between what I believe is Mystery Babylon, us, and the final form. I do think Russia is going to end up being one of the final ones, and I think Russia may be the Devouring Bear, which is the second of the Beast Kingdoms. And then I think it becomes one of the core key players that is part of the terrible Beast Kingdom of the Antichrist, which is multiple nations rolled up into one package. Anyway, the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. Upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, Mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus, and when I saw her I wandered with great admiration. The woman said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wander, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold who the beast was, and is not, and yet is. Here's the mind that hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. When he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th and of the 7, and goeth into perdition. Let's see here. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. Now, I haven't developed in any of my videos really the kings, the horns, and all that. I've seen material here and there from different people. I know that this would require an extensive study on my part to dig into it. I'm not really equipped to do that right now, and so I'm just going to kind of, for the time being, gloss over it. But this ties in with what I just mentioned, that the terrible beast kingdom of the Antichrist is a coalition of nations. It's not just going to be one nation. Alright. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is the Lord of lords, King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. And he said unto me, The waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. Okay? Talked about that in the last video as well. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. So in other words, at one point, the whore rules over this beast, but then, in the turning of time, it turns on her. It makes her desolate, naked, eats her flesh, burns her with fire. Alright. After these things I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, is become the habitation of devils, the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. For all nations have drunk with the wine of the wrath of her fornication, and the kings of earth have committed fornication with her, and the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies. She is a wealthy, corrupt, consumerist nation that has exported filth and degeneracy throughout the world. And I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, that ye receive not of her plagues. We saw a similar warning in Jeremiah. Come out so that you don't partake. So we're not talking ancient Babylon, where people who were captive there didn't have the self-determination to leave if they wanted to. No, this is something different. Her sins have reached unto heaven, God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her, according to her works, in the cup which she filled to her double. How much she hath glorified herself and lived deliciously, so much torment and sorrow give her. For she saith in her heart, I sit a queen, and am no widow, and shall see no sorrow. Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death and mourning and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire. For strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. And the kings of the earth who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. Now there is language in here that historically could be construed as referring to Roman Catholicism. And I would argue that Catholicism is just one underpinning of the rising Unitarian one world religious system that is eventually going to come to its full fruition. And we do see elements in here of that, the scarlet and purple robes and so forth. But there are clearly also elements here that do not fit. And in the modern era, I don't think you can really make the argument that the Roman Catholic Church is running everything. Alright, let's carry on. Kings of the earth, live deliciously. Yeah, okay. The kings of the earth, who have committed fornication and lived deliciously with her, shall bewail her and lament for her when they shall see the smoke of her burning. Standing afar off, for the fear of her torment, saying, Alas, alas, that great city Babylon, that mighty city, for in 1 hour is thy judgment come. And all the merchants of the earth shall weep and mourn over her, for no man buyeth their merchandise any more. So this is a consumerist entity, and represented by a particular consumerist city, which the merchants of the earth will specifically weep over. And then it goes on to talk about, in light of the Epstein files, there's some revelations here. I mean, it's always been there. The history books told us about this stuff. The scriptures did. Some really interesting stuff here. Well, let me hit on it. Merchandise of gold, silver, precious stones, pearls, fine linen, purple, silk, scarlet, thinine wood, all manner of vessels of ivory, all manner of most precious wood, brass, iron, marble, cinnamon, odors, ointments, frankincense, wine, oil, flour, wheat, beasts, sheep, horses, chariots, and slaves, and souls of men. And we saw in the Epstein files, yeah, they buy and sell children, they auction them. It's just like that movie. They tell us about this stuff in fiction, and I'm doing air quotes right now because we know that it's disclosure in many cases. Like the movie Taken, where the main character, his daughter is kidnapped and sold as a sex slave, and she's auctioned off to a wealthy, sultan or whatever, and he has to track her down and rescue her. Stuff's very real, and we see this in the Epstein files. Yeah, they're buying and selling women and children for all manner of things, ranging from sexual debauchery to human sacrifice to making jerky. They buy and sell slaves and the souls of men. Yeah. Yep. And the fruits that thy soul lusted after are departed from thee, and all things which were dainty and goodly are departed from thee, and thou shalt find them no more at all. The merchants of these things which were made rich by her shall stand afar off for fear of her torment. Why? I think this is another component in, she's destroyed by arrows that don't miss and fire, nuclear weapons, nuclear first strike. That's the suddenness of it, her destruction coming in one day, the extent of it laying waste to her land so it's never inhabited again. And it possibly triggers natural disasters like flooding and the sea coming up over her, things like that. I do think that it's a nuclear first strike, and I think that they're standing afar off for fear of the torment because of the radiation or whatever other elements are in there. Maybe there's biological weapons too. They don't want to get caught up in, they don't want to get irradiated or poisoned or what have you. Saying, alas, alas, that great city. When we're talking about the city, I believe we're talking about New York City. That was clothed in fine linen, and purple and scarlet, decked with gold, precious stones, and pearls. For in 1 hour so great riches is come to naught. And every shipmaster and all the company and ships and sailors, as many as trade by sea, stood afar off, and cried when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What city is like unto this great city? And they cast dust on their heads, cried, weeping and wailing, saying, Alas, the great city wherein we were made rich, all that had ships in the sea by reason of her costliness, for in 1 hour she is made desolate. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye apostles and prophets, for God hath avenged you on her. And we talked about that, how the United States has been supporting the regime changes that we always try to justify as being for the benefit of the people. For some reason, it seems like Christians around the world end up getting the short end of the stick quite a lot. Like in Syria, where we're giving money to Ukraine, that money is getting funneled to Syria. The regime in Syria are terrorists, and they're massacring Christians and groups that don't agree with them. And so our money is going to fund these evils in the world. And that's just something that's going to get worse. And there's another element here that I didn't realize when I wrote my 2019 book. I've talked about the book, Dr. Rebecca Brown's book. I'm just going to type it here. Dr. Rebecca Brown. He came to set the captives free. If you've read Brown, if you've read Nathan Reynolds, I think I spelled that right. If you've read Bloodlines of the Dudes, those dudes, these books talk about all kinds of stuff. How the Satanic Brotherhood, the actual military occult complex that is a major power in the UK and the United States, how they kidnap children. They exploit them. They use them in these blood, sex, and murder rituals. They kidnap pastors and crucify them to death in rituals. This stuff is happening in America, folks. Just because we don't know about it doesn't mean God doesn't see it. And so a lot of this stuff that we see here is really interesting, because the system, the evildoers who rule the world, Psalm 2, they know God is real, they hate him, and they try to delude the people and keep us in darkness, spiritual darkness and deception, while at the same time ruling over us, exploiting us, and using us like cattle. That was in the Epstein files too, where Epstein basically justified everything that he ever did by saying the Goyim exist for us to exploit them. Okay. The angel took up a stone like a millstone, cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall the great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all. The voice of harpers, musicians, pipers, trumpeters shall be found no more at all in thee. No craftsman shall be found any more at all in thee. The sound of millstone shall be heard no more at all in thee. No industry, no craft, no music, no more Broadway. Broadway, that's real interesting, right? Broadway. Broadway. Huh, that sounds almost biblical. Huh, kind of reminds me of how Jesus said that, the Broadway leads to hell. And a lot of this stuff being presented on Broadway is satanic filth designed to demoralize. Anyway, the light of the candle shall shine no more at all in thee. The voice of the bridegroom and the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, and by thy sorceries, pharmakeia, were all nations deceived. That word sorceries is pharmakeia. Let me show that to you here. Sorry, I'm still a little bit tired, and so I might be sounding a little bit, more tired than usual, which I am. But I'm much better than I was earlier. There we go, pharmakeia. So that's the root word of pharmaceuticals. I know a lot of you who are up on this stuff are well aware of this. By her sorceries, so this is another thing associated with Mystery Babylon, pharmakeia, and the Bible calls this sorceries. There are a great many things that are science falsely so-called, that we are told to be very careful of, because they're really sorcery couched as science. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that were slain upon the earth. She has a blood guiltiness for the murder of Christians around the world. And I've already talked to you how in her directly We have prophets and saints being murdered, Christian community. And I do think we may see more escalation of Christian persecution in this country in the future before the fall of Mystery Babylon, as the political scene continues to get more and more out of control. We're seeing that these communist leaders who hate God, they're not even hiding it anymore. Like the Virginia governor, she gets into office. The first thing she does is repeal a executive order by the previous governor saying that police in Virginia have to cooperate with ICE. She repeals that. And then one of the next things that they start doing is softening the penalties for rapists and murderers. And then one of the next things that they do is double their own salaries. Now, I don't know if all those motions went through, but that's what they were working on doing. And now what's next? They're trying to restrict guns, and we'll probably see gun grabs. I don't know. It's going to be real interesting. But they're not holding back anymore. They get into power now, and they're just going for the gusto. Full communist agenda. And along with that will be increased persecution of people of faith. Mark my words. And then it's almost like, so in the scriptures, Revelation's confusing because you have events that are repeated using different language, different symbols. And then there's literary devices like flash forward, flashbacks. It's almost like God is displaying in heaven, because it does talk in one point about Mystery Babylon coming into the Lord's remembrance. It's like he's showing in heaven to the saints who have been persecuted. They're showing her destruction, and it's like, this is how I vindicated you. And they're all getting to watch. Whether that's in real time or whether it's a representation of what happened in the past, because the Lord says that she came to remembrance. Hard to say exactly. But I think logically, before we see, the whore of Babylon riding on the beast is the terrible beast kingdom of the Antichrist. So before the beast can take full power, Mystery Babylon has to fall. And so it's really interesting to me that in... let's just go back to... I didn't really mean to talk about this, but since it is relevant, we'll talk about it. I mean, we're at war with Iran right now. By we, I mean the United States. I know not all of you guys who watch are Americans necessarily. So chapter 49 of Jeremiah, which is right before the chapters we looked at concerning the fall of Mystery Babylon, we have a war against this entity, Elam. Well, when you look into it, what is Elam? Elam is Iran. It's a region of Iran. Here's what the judgment on Elam is all about. I will break the bow of Elam. That's interesting. It's a missile weapon. Huh. What is Iran's greatest threat or greatest weapon? Missile weapons. I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might. Interesting. Upon Elam will I bring the four winds from the four quarters of heaven. That sounds like there's going to be a host of armies that assemble from all around the world. What's happening in Iran right now? Well, they stupidly decided to attack all the Western allies when the U.S. and Israel attacked them. So they also attacked Dubai. They also attacked Cyprus, 2 sites in Cyprus, I think it was, where the Brits have troops stationed. And they've ticked off the entire Western world. Now France, the UK, and Germany are all thinking about joining the coalition against Iran. That's insane. Iran just, well, I mean, and this is biblical. Elam, Iran, is about to experience a coalition summoned up from the four winds of the earth. And then they're going to be scattered towards all those winds. It says here, there shall be no nation whither the outcasts of Elam shall not come. For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies and before them that seek their life, and I will bring evil upon them, even my fierce anger, saith the Lord, and I will send the sword after them till I have consumed them. So whether that's the regime, I think that is, because we see here, this is interesting, I will set my throne in Elam, and will destroy from thence the king and the princes, saith the Lord. So I think the regime and the rulers, they're going to flee, they're going to be refugees, they're going to be hunted down. Maybe some of the people will be refugees too, because I think I suspect this may be a long, drawn-out war. I don't know. We'll see. But it could be. The potential is there for it to be short. I don't know if you saw the news where they hijacked Iranian TV and they're broadcasting Trump, giving the message to the Iranian people, it's time for you to take control of your country. Like, we're helping you, but we need you to step up on the inside and take back your government. If that happens, because the people vastly outnumber the regime, if that happens, this war could be over very quickly. If it doesn't, and the West has to basically rebuild Iran externally from the outside in, that means a real war that could be very prolonged. So I don't know how this is going to go. But one thing that I thought immediately when I saw the war had finally kicked off, and we've seen this coming for a long time, this was the war that the UK, France, and the US were saying that this is the one they may have to draft men and women for. I have had several people now tell me about prophetic visions of the USS Abraham Lincoln being hit by a kamikaze drone and completely destroyed and sunk. Whether these things will happen or not, I don't know. It'd be real interesting if they do. And that might be a false flag event, or it might actually be a legitimate attack. But if that happens, actually, I strongly suspect it'll be a false flag event. And I'm going to share with you why. Why not? We're not holding back today. One of the prophetic visions I saw, a woman said she saw, and she said, I never have prophetic visions. I've never experienced anything like this before. This was completely new to me. I saw the USS Abraham Lincoln, and I didn't know what it was when I saw it, but I saw the number, I believe it's 72, on it, on the side of the command tower, or whatever they call that. And so she said she looked it up afterwards, and it was clearly what she had seen in her dream was the USS Abraham Lincoln. And she saw a manned kamikaze drone that she said it had some kind of stealth technology. It was invisible to the crew and all the sensors on the ship. They never saw it coming, and that thing came right in and hit and destroyed it. And she said she was watching this like almost in slow motion, and she was saying, why can't they see it? Why can't they see this drone coming? And then she realized that it had some kind of stealth tech. And that's really interesting to me because I know the West has stealth tech. I don't know that Iran does. I know the West does. Because that's the technology that's being used to mask a lot of these anti-gravitic craft. And so that suggests to me the level of sophistication there, that this might be a false flag that's orchestrated with the assistance of elements within the West. Because that would be a major thing, you know. You have thousands of people on an aircraft carrier. That's a 9/11 level event. It's like a small city. It's going to be a huge ecological disaster. It's a small city. There's thousands of people living on an aircraft carrier. And something like that could very well get people in the West on board with a draft, which otherwise will be very unpopular. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes down. But it's interesting because this is in the context, it seems, but it shall come to pass in the latter days that I will bring again the captivity of Elam, saith the Lord. Anyway, one other thing, though, that I saw, as soon as the war kicked off, my thought was, this may open Iran up to the gospel for the first time in a generation. The people there are very disillusioned with Islam. They've suffered under it for so long. They are destroying mosques, and they are destroying religious schools, Islamic religious schools, and my thought was, it's time for them to meet Jesus. And then here we go. In Elam, I will set up my throne in Elam. Once the wicked leadership is purged. And, you know, as an American, I don't, like I said earlier in this video, I said this in the last video, I don't like that our country is the policeman of the world, but Mystery Babylon is used by God as his battle axe, the hammer of the whole earth, his weapons of war. The Iranian regime is clearly wicked. It's clearly repressing their own people, murdering their own people. They've murdered tens of thousands who were protesting. And, judgment's coming. What's interesting about this passage of Elam, too, so what comes after it is the fall of Mystery Babylon. And what came before it, well, there's some stuff in here that I'm not 100% sure of as of yet, but it clearly speaks to some other Middle Eastern thing going on. But there's also before it is the judgment of Damascus, and Damascus being reduced to rubble and stuff like that. That's the prophecy that came before it. And that sounds mighty familiar because we've been seeing this stuff. So I just think that it's really quite fascinating in context. Alright, well, I hope that I've, even if I haven't fully articulated my argument to the best of my degree, and I think I have, but even if I haven't and you're still not convinced that Mystery Babylon is America, I hope I've at least given you some stuff to think about and enough breadcrumbs to kind of lead you to look into this for yourself and come to your own conclusions on this stuff. I do think that more and more of this will become more and more clear as we get closer and closer to the end. And again, so I'm going to warn you about these books. There's some seriously dark stuff in these books. Seriously dark stuff. There was nothing in the Epstein files that was really surprising because I've read these books before and others like them. And the Epstein files were, I mean, it's a cliche to say it this way, but the tip of the iceberg. Two American regimes have had the Epstein files. You can bet that they've been thoroughly sanitized of everybody that matters and everything that matters. The only people left in the Epstein files are either those who are completely untouchable because they dead, and I use dead in quotation marks because Epstein, I think, is still alive. My reasoning for that is Epstein had a tattoo and the corpse that came out of the prison didn't have a tattoo. And I think Ghislaine has been released as well, and she's with Epstein wherever he is. Why do I say that? Well, like some of these, I think there's a lady, I want to say her channel is Melanie King, and then there's others that videos on these face comparisons. The person that's showing up for these, hearings and stuff as Ghislaine Maxwell is not her, clearly. Like everything about her is different. The eye folds and eye orientation and all manner of other things. They just slapped a similar hairstyle to Ghislaine's pre-prison hairstyle on this white lady, and said, good enough, she'll pass. And I think Ghislaine Maxwell is with Epstein wherever he is, probably back in Israel. But anyway, a lot of stuff going on right now. Nothing in the Epstein files, like I said, very sanitized. The real story is here in these books, and it is dark. And there are things that you're going to read in these books that you are not going to want to believe. But that's why I have my channel here. That's why I have that playlist with many. I think there's probably at least a dozen there, but many videos with many first-hand interviews of people encountering things like dogmen, and why I have material on evil beasts of the end times and all this stuff, because more and more of this stuff is going to become reality. It's going to be dragged out into the light or come crawling out of the darkness into the light, whether we want it to or not. And it's going to get worse as the end times approach. We got miles to go. We got years to go. The Bible tells us, occupy till he comes. The Bible tells us, endure to the end, that we may be saved. The Bible tells us that he that denies the Son before men, the Son will deny him before the Father. So hang in there. Don't deny the faith. Don't give up the ship. God bless. You guys have a good one.